I am Dr. Laura Moreno, and in this video, I want to talk to you about something that almost no one connects directly to memory, yet it plays a decisive role every single day. What you eat today determines how your memory will work tomorrow, not years from now, not only in old age, today. Because memory doesn't disappear suddenly, it is built or slowly weakened through daily choices that often seem harmless. Memory is not just about remembering names or dates. Memory includes focus, mental clarity, learning ability, processing speed, emotional regulation, and decision making. All of that depends on the brain. And the brain does not function in isolation. It depends on what it receives from the body: oxygen, nutrients, stable energy, and chemical signals. A large part of that comes directly from food. Every time you eat, you send information to your brain. That information affects blood sugar, inflammation, circulation, hormones, and neurotransmitters, and all of those influence how well your brain can store, retrieve, and process information. Many people believe memory problems only begin later in life, but in reality, cognitive decline often starts much earlier, sometimes decades earlier, with subtle signs that are easy to ignore: forgetfulness, difficulty concentrating, mental fatigue, slower thinking, trouble learning new things. These are often blamed on stress or age, but very often, food is a major contributor. The brain is one of the most energy demanding organs in the body. Even though it represents a small percentage of body weight, it consumes a large portion of daily energy. But the brain does not work well with unstable fuel. It needs consistent, steady energy, not sharp spikes followed by crashes. When the diet is dominated by refined carbohydrates, added sugars, and ultra-processed foods, blood sugar rises quickly and then drops just as fast. At first, this can feel like energy or alertness, but soon after, mental fatigue, irritability, brain fog, and difficulty concentrating appear. Repeated blood sugar spikes and crashes strain the brain over time. They interfere with insulin signaling in the brain, which is essential for memory and learning. Insulin is not only about diabetes, it plays a direct role in how brain cells communicate and adapt. When the brain becomes less sensitive to insulin, memory formation becomes less efficient. Processing slows down. Mental endurance decreases. This does not happen overnight. It happens quietly, gradually, through repeated daily patterns. Inflammation is another key piece of this puzzle. What you eat can either increase or reduce inflammation in the body, and the brain is especially sensitive to chronic, low-grade inflammation. This is not the type of inflammation that causes obvious pain or fever. It's subtle, persistent, and damaging over time. Diets high in sugar, poor quality fats, ultra-processed foods, and excessive alcohol promote this inflammatory state. Inflammation interferes with neural connections, disrupts neurotransmitter balance, and accelerates cognitive aging. On the other hand, diets based on real foods, vegetables, fruits, healthy fats, adequate protein, and proper hydration create an internal environment that supports brain function and resilience. Fats deserve special attention here. The brain is largely made of fat, but it requires specific types of fats to maintain flexible, functional cell membranes. When these fats are lacking or replaced by damaged fats, communication between neurons becomes less efficient. Many people avoid fats and replace them with low-fat, high-sugar products. This does not protect memory, it undermines it. The gut also plays a critical role. There is a constant communication between the gut and the brain. The bacteria in your intestines produce substances that influence inflammation, mood, focus, and memory. A diet low in fiber and high in processed foods disrupts this microbiome. This disruption does not only cause digestive symptoms, it contributes to brain fog, anxiety, poor concentration, and memory difficulties. Micronutrients matter as well. Vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants are essential for protecting brain cells and producing neurotransmitters. A diet that is repetitive, limited, or based mostly on processed foods may provide enough calories but not enough nutrients. Many people are not under-eating, they are under-nourishing. Their stomach is full, but their brain is poorly supplied. Hydration is another underestimated factor. Even mild dehydration can impair attention, short-term memory, and mood. Many people rely heavily on coffee, sodas, or sweetened drinks and drink very little water. Coffee can stimulate alertness temporarily, but it does not replace hydration. Meal timing also affects the brain. Skipping meals, eating erratically, or having large, heavy meals late at night creates metabolic stress. That stress affects cognitive performance. The brain functions best with rhythm and predictability. Extreme fluctuations disrupt that rhythm. A very common mistake is waiting until memory problems appear to start caring, but memory is not repaired once it's lost. It is protected beforehand. What you eat today influences how your brain performs tomorrow, next year, and over the next decades. Every meal is a signal of stability or stress, of nourishment or inflammation, and when you begin to see food not just as calories or pleasure, but as daily information for your brain, the relationship with eating changes. It stops being about restriction and starts being about support. Because the memory of tomorrow is not built by a supplement or a quick fix. It is built by repeated, ordinary decisions that seem small but accumulate over time, shaping how clearly you think, how well you remember, and how resilient your brain will be in the future. Opening the space to understand which everyday eating habits quietly damage memory, which ones support it, and what common mistakes accelerate cognitive decline without most people ever realizing it. To really understand how everyday eating habits shape memory, it helps to look at what most people eat on a normal day, not on their best day. Because memory is affected far more by what you do consistently than by what you do occasionally. Many people start the day with a breakfast that looks harmless but sets the tone for mental instability. Refined bread, sweet cereals, pastries, flavored yogurts, fruit juice. These foods push blood sugar up quickly. The brain gets a brief sense of alertness, but it doesn't last. Within a couple of hours, attention drops, focus fades, and the mind feels scattered. This pattern teaches the brain to rely on quick fuel instead of steady fuel. Over time, this reduces mental endurance. People feel like they can't think for long, like their brain tires easily. It's not a lack of intelligence, it's unstable energy. Another common pattern is eating very little during the day and then eating heavily at night. The brain needs nutrients during waking hours when it's doing the most work. When it doesn't get them, it operates in conservation mode. Learning and memory formation suffer. Then, when a large meal comes late in the evening, the body shifts into digestion mode right when it should be preparing for rest. This affects sleep quality, and sleep is essential for memory consolidation. Poor sleep means weaker memory, regardless of how well you ate during the day. Ultra-processed foods are another major factor. These foods are engineered to be convenient and stimulating, but they offer very little real nourishment for the brain. They promote inflammation, disrupt gut bacteria, and create metabolic stress. Over time, they reduce cognitive efficiency. Many people notice that after eating heavily processed meals, their thinking becomes slower, their concentration drops, and they feel mentally dull. This is not imagination, it's a real physiological response. Alcohol deserves special attention. Even moderate, frequent alcohol consumption interferes with memory. Alcohol affects the hippocampus, a key brain structure involved in forming new memories. It also disrupts sleep, which further impairs memory consolidation. Protein intake also matters. The brain depends on amino acids to produce neurotransmitters like dopamine, serotonin, and acetylcholine, all essential for attention, learning, and memory. Diets that are too low in quality protein can leave the brain without the raw materials it needs. This doesn't mean eating excessive protein. It means eating enough and from varied sources. Another overlooked factor is dietary monotony. Eating the same limited foods every day, even if they seem healthy, can lead to subtle nutrient gaps. The brain benefits from diversity. Different foods provide different micronutrients that support different cognitive processes. Memory is also affected by circulation. What you eat influences blood vessel health. Diets that promote inflammation and lipid imbalance reduce blood flow to the brain. Less blood flow means less oxygen and fewer nutrients reaching neurons. That directly affects memory and processing speed. This is why some memory issues are not purely brain problems, but vascular and metabolic ones. The brain cannot perform well if its supply lines are compromised. The gut-brain connection appears again here. A disrupted gut microbiome produces inflammatory substances that can reach the brain and interfere with cognition. Supporting gut health supports memory, even if the connection isn't immediately obvious. There is also the issue of constant snacking. Eating all day without breaks keeps insulin elevated and prevents metabolic recovery. The brain benefits from periods of stability, not constant stimulation. This doesn't require extreme fasting. It requires allowing the body time between meals to reset. Another common mistake is looking for supplements to fix memory while daily eating habits remain unchanged. Supplements cannot compensate for repeated inflammatory meals. The foundation always comes first. The brain is remarkably adaptable. Many people notice improvements in focus, memory, and clarity within weeks of stabilizing blood sugar, reducing ultra-processed foods, improving hydration, and eating more consistently. These changes don't require perfection, just direction. What matters most is the pattern you repeat most often. Memory decline is not sudden. It is the result of accumulated stress on the brain, and food is one of the most constant sources of that stress or support. When you begin to pay attention to how different meals affect your thinking, your focus, and your mental energy, you start to see the connection clearly. Some foods support your brain, others quietly drain it. And once that connection becomes visible, it becomes impossible to ignore that what you eat today is shaping not just your body, but the clarity, sharpness, and resilience of your mind tomorrow. A realization that naturally leads to questioning which everyday foods accelerate memory decline, which ones protect it, and how small, realistic changes can have a much bigger impact on long-term brain health than most people ever expect. And when you start asking those questions, the picture becomes much clearer, because memory loss is rarely about a single dramatic factor. It's about daily exposure, daily strain, daily nourishment, or lack of it. One of the biggest hidden problems is that many people eat in a way that constantly overstimulates the brain but underfeeds it at the same time. Sugar, refined carbohydrates, and highly palatable processed foods flood the brain with quick signals of pleasure and reward. Dopamine rises fast, but there is very little lasting nourishment behind that stimulation. Over time, the brain becomes less responsive. It needs more stimulation to feel the same effect. Attention becomes fragmented. Focus weakens. Memory formation suffers. This is not addiction in the classic sense, but it is a form of neural exhaustion. The brain learns that food equals stimulation, not stability. And a brain that is constantly stimulated struggles to retain information. Another issue that quietly affects memory is inflammation inside the brain itself, sometimes referred to as neuroinflammation. This doesn't cause obvious symptoms early on. It shows up as slower thinking, reduced mental flexibility, difficulty multitasking, and increased mental fatigue. Neuroinflammation is strongly influenced by diet, excess sugar, poor quality fats, chronic overconsumption, and lack of antioxidants all contribute. When this inflammation persists, memory circuits become less efficient. Antioxidant-rich foods help counter this process, not by being miraculous, but by reducing the oxidative stress that damages neurons over time. When these foods are missing, the brain ages faster. Another critical factor is mitochondrial health. Mitochondria are the energy producers inside cells, including brain cells. Neurons are extremely dependent on efficient energy production. Diets that create metabolic stress impair mitochondrial function. When mitochondria underperform, the brain cannot sustain mental effort. People experience this as mental exhaustion, short attention span, and poor memory retention. They may feel burned out mentally even when life doesn't feel overwhelming. This is why memory issues often show up alongside fatigue. They are connected. There's also the role of chronic low-grade insulin resistance in the brain. Even without diabetes, repeated blood sugar spikes can reduce the brain's ability to use glucose efficiently. Some researchers refer to this as a form of metabolic brain stress. The result is a brain that has fuel available but can't use it well. Memory and learning suffer as a result. Fiber intake is another underestimated factor. Fiber feeds gut bacteria that produce compounds beneficial to brain health. Low fiber diets disrupt this process. The brain loses protective signals coming from the gut. Many people focus on protein and fats but forget fiber entirely. Over time, this imbalance affects cognition more than most realize. Meal timing also interacts with memory. Eating very late at night disrupts sleep, and sleep is when memories are consolidated. You can eat well during the day, but if sleep is consistently poor because of late or heavy meals, memory will suffer. Hydration continues to matter here. Brain tissue is sensitive to changes in hydration. Even small deficits can impair short-term memory and concentration, and many people live in a constant state of mild dehydration without knowing it. Stress and food choices reinforce each other. Stress drives people toward quick, comforting foods. Those foods increase inflammation and blood sugar instability. That instability worsens stress resilience and cognitive clarity. A cycle forms. Breaking that cycle doesn't require extreme discipline. It requires awareness. Another subtle factor is nutrient competition. Diets high in sugar and refined foods increase the need for certain vitamins and minerals. When intake doesn't match demand, deficiencies develop faster. The brain feels the impact first. This is why some people experience memory issues even when blood tests appear normal. Optimal brain function requires more than avoiding deficiency, it requires sufficiency. The most important thing to understand is that memory decline is not inevitable. The brain remains adaptable for a very long time. When conditions improve, function often improves too. People often notice that when they stabilize their meals, reduce processed foods, hydrate properly, and eat more intentionally, their memory doesn't just stop worsening, it begins to feel sharper, names come more easily, focus lasts longer, mental fatigue decreases. These changes don't happen because of one perfect meal. They happen because the brain finally receives consistent signals of safety and nourishment. And once you experience that shift, it becomes clear that memory is not something you lose suddenly. It's something you either protect or neglect every day, often without realizing it, through choices that seem small in the moment but quietly shape how your brain will perform, adapt, and remember in the years ahead. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss future videos where we explain, in a clear and practical way, how daily habits like food choices shape brain health and memory over time. Share this video with someone who feels their focus or memory isn't what it used to be. Leave your questions or experiences in the comments, and join me as we continue learning how small, consistent decisions today can protect clarity, learning, and mental strength for the future.